Hey everyone. Kind of a bit of a departure from my usual PC DOS videos to make an Apple II video for once. I make a lot of videos about Apple II GS stuff, but this is more classic Apple. Like this is real classic Apple II stuff. So a lot of people might have seen old classic Apple II graphics and wondered why was there so much weird green and purple fringing. If you've ever seen what I'm talking about, you'll recognize it instantly. Apple II users from the time will recognize it right away. If you've ever seen it, it's very distinctive. If you've not seen it, then well, you'll see it in the video and you'll see what I'm talking about. But why were the graphics like that? Why did the Apple II have this weird problem with color fringing? I'll try to go into a little bit. I'll try to do a little bit of a demonstration about how Apple II graphics worked and why they were the way they were. There are other videos about this, but I haven't seen a video which actually demonstrates live, like how it actually looks when you actually do stuff, or how to actually sort of exhibit this effect using simple AppleSoft basic commands. So that's what I'll be doing today. And I should make it clear before I start, what I'm talking about here today is really the original Apple II stuff. So later computers of the Apple II family, like the Apple IIe, and especially the Apple II GS, had a lot more ways to make more fancy graphics. The Apple IIe could produce better colors and better graphics, and the Apple II GS had much more advanced graphical capabilities. I mean, as is often observed, the G in Apple II GS it literally stood for graphics, because the machine had such expanded, enhanced graphics compared to the previous Apple II machines. So there's a lot more you can do with those computers. But today I'm just talking about stuff which applies really to the original Apple II, not the IIe or IIc or IIgs, just the Apple II. Maybe in the future I'll talk more about some of the special stuff for those other machines. I don't know, we'll see. But anyway, here I have an emulated Apple II. And right now it's running in monochrome mode. By default it runs in monochrome. And basic monochrome graphics on the Apple II are actually fairly good. I mean, if I start just typing some text here, it has fairly good, fairly sharp monochrome graphics. Like the edges are fairly clean. I mean, the resolution isn't especially high, but it's usable. This was a perfectly usable graphical mode, and it was relatively simple to program for. But everything goes totally crazy if you start trying to use color. So let's start trying to use color. If you've just turned on your Apple II, you can get into the basic, like the very simple, the very most basic graphics mode by just typing GR for graphics. And so what's happened now, you can already see that the text has become fuzzier, whereas before we had very sharply defined text. Now the text has become a little bit fuzzy, and it's already exhibiting some of that color fringing that I was talking about. This is what I'm talking about. If you've never seen what I was talking about, now you're seeing it. See how the letters there are developing these sort of weird green and purple fringes? Very distinctive feature of Apple II graphics. And technically what we have here is what's called mixed mode, because I have 4 lines of text at the bottom, and then above that I have a graphical space where I can put graphical things. So and we can just manually put things in there with the plot command. But before I do that, I need to specify a color. So let's say color equals, I think the default is color 0, which is actually black. But okay, let's say color is 0, and then we can say, because in computers everything starts with a 0. The first number is not 1, the first number is 0. So you can say plot 0, 0, and you won't see anything. What that's done is it's put a pixel, or actually not a pixel, but like a square. Rather than trying to explain it, let me go ahead and move on, and you'll see what it's doing. So I'll say color equals 1 now, and I'll say plot 1, 1. So see, now up there you've got a little blob of color. So the plot command just takes an XY coordinate. So if I typed 1, 1, which means X position 1 and Y position 1, so row 1, column 1. And I could add to that. I could say plot 2, 1, and see now it's extended that blob of text, or not text, that blob of color a little bit horizontally. So I have essentially 2 pixels. They're not really pixel, but I guess they're kind of pixels in a sense, but they're not really pixels as we normally think of them. But they're kind of 2 pixels next to each other that have been turned on. So I can just go through the whole list of colors. We have 16 colors essentially available. So if I say color equals 2, then I can say plot 2, 2. Color equals 3, plot 3, 3. I'm just doing this so we can see the different colors. Colors 4, plot 4, 4. Colors 5, plot 5, 5. Color equals 6. Notice, by the way, most of these colors have a, they're not solid. You can see they actually have like black bars in them. So basically they're vertically interlaced. So instead of just being solid colors, they have like one vertical line of color and then a black vertical line and then a line of color and then another black vertical line. There's a reason for that. Maybe we'll see what the reason for that is later. And also notice that gray one there, I think that was number 5. That one's actually solid, but most of these are not. Kind of interesting. You can already start seeing some quirkiness happening here, and this is just the early stages. Things get even crazier later. So I'm just gonna go through these. Plot 9. And you can see the color's not consistent. Like that one there, it starts off kind of yellowy and becomes then orange and then becomes red at the end. Like, why is this happening? Just kind of crazy stuff is going on. I'm not going to be able to explain all of this today, but I'll try to explain at least part of it. I'll try to explain the most basic part of it. So up to color 12, 13, 14, whoops, and 15. And 15 is the last color. Color 16, you can say color 16, but that wraps around to black. So the Apple II was sometimes advertised as a 16 color machine. Because it can technically do 16 colors in this low resolution mode. But I think it's apparent that the kind of graphics that we have going on here, it's not really suitable for most applications, except maybe for like extremely primitive stuff. You could maybe make very blocky games with it, but let's be realistic. Most people are not going to use this for most things. So this is kind of like, if you're a kid, I mean, when I was a kid and I was messing around with an Apple II and writing my very first programs in BASIC, this is what I started with. This is maybe suitable for young children or for people who are literally writing their very first computer programs. It might be a relatively user-friendly way to introduce them to the idea of writing a program and doing plot x, y coordinates and stuff like that. But it's pretty simple stuff. So this is just the beginning. But what we really want to look at today is the what's called the high resolution mode. So let me actually. Let me just show you, if you ever want to get out of this graphics mode and go back to the mode that we started in, you can just type text. And text will then take you back to monochrome text mode. You can also see it's done something funny with the pixels that we had there. It's sort of turned them into, it's tried to convert them into text character codes, which is another story for another day. It looks kind of weird, but let's not dwell on that too much now. You can kind of see there's some funny stuff happening there. Already some kind of signs of really weird stuff that was happening with Apple II graphics. But okay, anyway, let's move on. So the Apple II has a high resolution graphics mode. Actually, it has two technically. It even has something called double high resolution, which as far as I can tell was never really very widely used. I think like a small handful of productivity programs used it, like word processors and stuff like that. But I don't think it was used by a lot of games. I might be wrong. I know some games used it, but it's kind of like it was not well understood at the time, as far as I know. It's not even very well understood today. Most people who do Apple II stuff use the regular high-res graphics mode. So I'm not going to cover that for this video. If people are really interested, then maybe we can get into that in a future video. But for now, for this video, let's keep it relatively simple and focus on the most commonly used graphics mode, which is the regular high-resolution graphics mode. And we can enter that here from BASIC by typing HGR. So previously we had GR for graphics. Now HGR takes us to high-resolution graphics. So here we are. And it doesn't look like much now, but let's start plotting some pixels on this again. So last time we had the color command. Now for high resolution graphics, you need to preface everything with H. So previously we could do like color equals 5. Now we have to do, because we're in high resolution mode, we have to say H color to set the color here in high resolution mode. So let's start with H color equals 3, which is supposed to be white. It's supposed to be white, but obviously because I'm saying it's supposed to be white, you can probably guess that there's some catch there, or a couple of catches actually. And also, if you say something like plot and put an X and Y position, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't give you an error, but it just doesn't do anything in high res mode. You need to use hplot for high resolution plot. So I'm gonna do some stuff with high resolution plot. And actually, you know what? Let me okay, let me do the first pixel first before I get ahead of myself. Let me just actually put one pixel on the screen so I kind of have a baseline. So I'll say hplot. And I'm going to say X position is 10, so 10 pixels to the right of the left edge of the screen. And then for my row, I'll say 120. There we go, and we've got a pixel there. And so now what I'm going to do, what I was about to say is I'm going to crop the screen here. Let me crop out, because trying to look at pixels like this is really, really uncomfortable. I mean, it's pretty blurry as it is because the way that the Apple II does graphics is a little bit blurry inherently. And then, you know, when you're trying to look at single pixels where the color is sometimes not so defined, I mean, you're going to go blind if you try to squint at these pixels in this video. So I'm gonna crop out the rest of the video because the rest of the video is just going to be this little area down here. So there we go. I'll leave it like that. I know it looks ugly, but at least it's kind of zoomed in so you can see these little, because you know that pixel is just like a little blotch, and it's going to be really hard to distinguish the colors if I don't crop the rest of the screen like that. So there we go. Hopefully that's at least somewhat watchable. I know it's going to look horribly blurry, but hopefully it's at least visible what the color is. I mean, I think you can see. So like I said, H color equals 3. I specified the high-res color as 3. That's supposed to be white, but the pixel that we have here is obviously purple, not white. So let's move along as I did last time. I'll make like a little diagonal line. So I'll say on the next line, I'll do X position 11, Y position 121. And once again, instead of getting a white pixel, now we have a green pixel. Move along, make a little line here. So we have another purple pixel, and I'll make one more pixel. Now we have another green pixel. So why is this happening? The reason why this is happening is because the Apple II can only display specific colors at specific screen locations. The rule is this, the most basic rule is this. Only odd-numbered x-coordinates can be green, and only even-numbered x-coordinates can be purple. So we started off with an x position of 10, which is, of course, an even number, and that's why the pixel at x position 10 is purple. And then we went to 11, which is obviously an odd number, so, you know, even, odd, and that's why we have purple, green, purple, green. There's no way to change that. There's no option or setting to change or adjust that. That's just how the Apple II is. It's literally physically designed like that in the hardware. Only odd-numbered x-coordinates, so basically columns, only odd-numbered columns can be green, and only even-numbered columns can be purple. So what happens now if we add to the first line? So our first line was line 120. So I did hplot 10, 120. So I'll stay on the same line and move over to the next horizontal pixel. So I'll set the pixel to the right of that. So that our very first pixel up there in the upper left, I'll add another pixel to the right of that. And look what's happened. I don't know how visible it is. I know it's horribly blurry, but check it out. The purple pixel has become white, and now there is a second white pixel next to it. 2 pixels that are turned on side by side become white. So if you have more than 1 pixel next to each other, like horizontally next to each other, then it interprets that as a white line, and it draws both of those pixels white. Or it doesn't have to be 2 pixels, it can be 3 or anything more than 1. Anything more than 1 is interpreted as white if you're using the color white. But you cannot have a white single pixel. And this also applies to vertical lines. So if I made like a whole line, I could draw like a whole line, a whole vertical line, and if it's a perfectly vertical line, it will just be a color. It will be either green or purple. You cannot have a white vertical line. A 1 pixel wide vertical line must have the color which belongs to that column, either green or purple. Now in practice, you can typically get around that by just making vertical lines 2 pixels wide. I mean, graphics don't necessarily have to have like 1 pixel thick lines. You can just make like vertical lines 2 pixels wide, and then they'll be white if you want them to be. So it's usually not a huge disadvantage. It's usually not a huge limitation, but this is one reason why many Apple II programs have weird green and purple pixels. I mean, if you look at the text, like take a look at the text that I'm typing in, you can see. For example, in that comma there between the 2 numbers, you can see like the lower left portion of the comma is green, and then the rest of the comma is purple, because the left column, like the column that the left pixel is in, is a green column, and then the column after that is a purple column. Again, no way to change that. It's just how it is. And if you look at like the ones, all the ones have like the main bar on the ones. The main bar on the ones is either purple or green because that's 1 pixel wide. But the bar at the bottom of the 1 is white because it's several pixels in a row, and also the little, what do you call it? The little hang at the top of the 1 is also white because that also is 2 pixels next to each other. So where you have 2 pixels or more next to each other, they become white, but 1 pixel line is going to be green or purple. Crazy, huh? That's just how Apple II graphics work. But that's not even the whole story. That's most of the story for people who are using high-resolution graphics mode. And a lot of people who made early Apple II games just stopped at this. This was enough for them. They just said, okay, I understand how to draw graphics now, 1 pixel at a time. And if they have this really weird purple and green problem where the text has these weird purple and green artifacts in it, then we just have to live with it. And a lot of early games did that. A lot of early games looked like this. They just, they just had these weird sort of psychedelic colors, and it wasn't too bad at the time because this was the 1970s, which was very early days for computers. So I mean, having a computer with a screen on it was special. This was a time when the first computers didn't even have a monitor or a keyboard. The only output you had on those computers was a huge bank of LEDs, and the only input you had was a huge bank of flip switches. So things like a keyboard and a monitor, which the Apple II had on it, that was really something super special. So people were not too concerned at the time about some weird purple and green fringing in their graphics. Okay, I'll show you now the flip side of all this. There's kind of a flip side to this purple-green story. I've lied to you a little bit. Or I haven't lied, but I've only told you half the story because there's another side to the story where we have 2 different colors. So I've told you the purple-green story. There's also a blue and orange story. So how do we see that blue and orange story? Let's go ahead and do that. Let me go ahead and if I type HGR again, it's going to blank out the screen. So we're back to just a black screen. And I'll go ahead and do what I did before. So I'll say H color equals 3, which is supposed to be white, but it's only white if you have 2 pixels next to each other, as we've seen. And I'll recreate the thing that we had. So I did hplot 10, 120, 11, 121, hplot 12, 122, and then hplot 13, 123. So, okay, this is where we were last time. Now I'm going to choose a different color. I'm going to say H color equals 7. Now, high resolution color 7 is also supposed to be white, but Let's see what happens if I put some pixels on the same rows. So like for example, our first pixel there is, I did hplot 10, 120. So it's at horizontal position 10, vertical position 120. So if I add a pixel now at position 12, at horizontal position 12, that theoretically should have no effect on the pixel that's there, because that's a different that's two columns away. So like I said, if you have two pixels right next to each other, they'll turn white. But if you put a pixel two columns away, then it shouldn't impact the existing pixel. They'll just both have the same color, because again, if it's purple occurs in even numbered, that's right, purple occurs in even numbered columns. So if I put another pixel two columns away, I'll just have another purple pixel. So now I should have two purple pixels next to each other with a black pixel in between them. But let's see what actually happens. Our once purple pixel has become blue. And also it's shifted horizontally a little bit. There's also reason. So the reason why it's kind of shifted like that is, I'm not going to talk too much about that today. Basically, it has to do with how the Apple II kind of scans through the colors. There's something called a pixel clock, which is basically the rate at which pixels are sent to the monitor. And the Apple II kind of cheats. It's not even really doing proper graphics. It's basically kind of using a very simple... The reason why the Apple II has these quirks is because it uses a very, very simple graphics system. Simple for the hardware designer. It's not simple to program. It makes things more complicated for people like us who want to program. But it made the hardware design simpler, which was important in the 1970s. It's less important today, but in the 1970s, they didn't want to have too many components. They were trying to save on parts for the machine. So to make a cheaper machine, like a machine that was cheaper to manufacture and simple to design from the hardware perspective, that's why they did this. So the Apple II is kind of stealing cycles out of the pixel clock to do color processing, and that's why if you use different colors, then the pixels start getting off, so they kind of get shifted. We think of pixels as being in very set positions on the monitor, but it's not necessarily the case. They can kind of get skewed and shifted a little bit if the timing's off. And what's happening here is the timing has been changed because we switched to a different color. Okay, so we now have two blue pixels. My new pixel is blue, but also for some reason the pixel that we had before has also become blue. Why does this happen? Let's continue on. Let's go down, and I'll keep doing this. I'll keep adding new pixels, two positions to the right of the old pixels. So our next line is 121. So I did 11 121. So now let's do 13 121. And so first of all, the first pixel on the second line, which used to be green, has become orange. And I've got some really crazy, the second pixel is also supposed to be orange, but it's not really properly orange because of some weird color effect, which I'm not going to discuss now. But basically what we have here is two orange pixels. I know the second one doesn't really look orange. We have two orange pixels now on the second line. Okay, moving on. So I'll say hplot 14 for line 122. Now, we have a purple pixel. Right now on the third line, we have a purple pixel there. So I'm going to add a pixel two columns to the right of it. And look what's happened. This time, it looks like we didn't really disturb that purple pixel, which was there. Why did that happen? Why is the purple pixel there not affected in the same way? So I've got a new, and actually the new pixel also looks purple, which isn't supposed to happen. But yeah, why didn't we disturb the pixel that was there? We'll get to that. And for the last thing now, I'll say, 15 on line 123. And again, watch what happens. This is going to get a little crazy, maybe. So we got a new orange pixel, which is maybe not too surprising. But look what's happened to the pixel on the left. We had a pixel on the left, and instead of it being one pixel, it turned into a 2-pixel white line. So I started off by saying H color equals 3, which is supposed to be white. But it's white using the first color palette, and the Apple II has 2 different color palettes. So the first color palette has colors purple and green. If you say high-res color is 7, that's also white, but that is now switching to the second color palette, and the second color palette has colors, as you probably guessed by now, blue and orange. So just as only odd-numbered X positions can be green, and only even-numbered X positions can be purple, only odd-numbered X coordinates can be orange, and only even-numbered X coordinates can be blue. So on the first line, what we have there, we have 2 pixels that are on even-colored columns, even-colored X coordinates, and that's why they're blue. Second line then is on odd numbered coordinates, that's why they're orange, or it's supposed to be orange. The third line is also supposed to be, because those are also odd numbered columns, they are supposed to be, even numbers. They're supposed to be blue, and I don't know why the new pixel looks purple. Because basically what's supposed to happen is the old pixel is supposed to remain purple, and the new one should be blue. And then again, the new pixel that made on the fourth line is orange because it's on an odd-numbered column, and only odd-numbered columns can have orange color. So, okay. So that's maybe not too surprising. So internally, there are the 2 palettes. You can either have green and purple or blue and orange. So the Apple II divides up the screen into groups of 7 bits or 7 pixels. And there's a so it's kind of difficult. I'm trying to think of how to represent. I mean, it's good to represent it graphically, but I don't really have a good way for representing it graphically here. So if you imagine an 8-bit binary number like that, essentially the screen is divided up into blocks of 8 bits, where each bit represents 1 pixel. And if the bit for that column is 0, then that pixel will be black. It will be turned off. And if the bit for that column is 1, then the pixel will be turned on. And if it's 1 pixel standing alone, then it will have a color. And if you have a group of pixels next to each other that are turned on like that, then they'll be white. But the first pixel here, the first pixel determines not the color, but the palette. So it's kind of like, you can represent it kind of like P, C, 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 C. What I mean by that is the last 7 bits just define the color. I mean, they define whether, well, it's not, they don't really define the color, they just define whether that pixel is on or off. That's basically just telling you whether the pixel is on or off. But the first bit defines the palette. If that bit is a 0, then the 7 pixels in that space are going to be purple and green. If the palette bit is set to a 1, then the pixels in that group are going to be blue and orange. I don't know if that makes sense. I hope that it's kind of understandable. But basically then what's happened is, on our first line, because the 2 pixels, so we have 2 pixels in the same pixel group. Those 2 pixels are in the same pixel group together. And because I set the new pixel to have the second palette, the blue and orange palette, that affected all other pixels in that group. And that's why the first pixel turned the first pixel turned blue, because we turned on the palette bit for that pixel group, and that changed everything that was purple. That changed everything purple in that group to become blue. Same thing happened on the second row, because I turned on the palette bit, since I'm using the second, because I'm using high-res color 7, that turns on the palette bit for that pixel group. So everything that was green becomes orange there. Now, why didn't the first pixel on line 3 get changed? The reason is because that change happened at a boundary of a pixel group. So basically, again, I believe the way it works is, since you have 7 pixel groups, you have basically, is that right? I'm just trying to think now. I'm actually wondering if I made a mistake in my math, because, hold on. I'm just realizing that I might have made a mistake, because okay, I'm going to say what I think happened. And somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, because I believe, I'm just realizing that I think I might have, I'm not sure. So what I think happened here, what I was theorizing happened, and what I'm realizing might not be quite true, is the pixel groups are basically numbered first from 0 to 6, because everything starts from 0, and again, these are groups of 7 pixels. And then you have from 7 to 13, and then from 14 to 20. So our first pixels there, our first pixels, the very first pixel, or the very first row, I should say, the very first row has pixels in columns 10 and 12. And you can see those are in the same group. Those are in the 7 to 13 group. The second line has pixels in the 11th column and the 13th column. Those are also in the same group, so that's why they affect each other. But what happened next, what happened after that is the third row has the first pixel in position 12, and the second pixel is in position 14. So you can see that's in a different group. So on line 3, the new pixel did not impact the old pixel, because the new pixel is in a different group from the old one. And finally, on our last line there, on our fourth line of pixels there, the first pixel is at position 13, and the next pixel is in position 15. Those are also in different groups, but because I turned on the palette bit, essentially what's happened is the first pixel is at the end of its pixel group, and the next pixel, or the next bit, the next bit in memory after position 13 is the palette bit of the next pixel group. And by using the second palette for position 15, I actually turned on that palette bit, which creates 2 ones next to each other in video memory. Even though the palette bit is not supposed to be used for graphics, it's supposed to be a palette switching thing. It's not supposed to actually turn pixels on or off. Essentially what's happened is the bit in memory after position 13 is a 1, and so you have 2 ones next to each other in video memory, which then gets rendered as 2 white pixels next to each other. Is that correct? I'm just thinking, I'm wondering if I made a mistake there, or if that's accurate. I believe that's what happened. Because that's the only explanation that makes sense, because, yeah, because the one pixel that was there on the last line became two white pixels. And the reason for that is because there are now two ones next to each other in video memory. And the reason there are two ones next to each other is because I turned on the palette bit for the next pixel group. And so that's why it gets like that. Somebody please correct me if I made a mistake there, but I believe that's why the previous pixel turned into a 2-pixel white line. Okay. That's all for this video. This is literally just like the most basic introduction. This is like the most simple, believe it or not, this is probably the most simple possible introduction to this weird sort of color artifacting problem that the Apple II has. And now maybe you understand a little bit better why this kind of thing was so common, why this was so commonly seen on Apple II games, and not only games, but other software of the time, because this is how it handles color. Again, the Apple IIe and especially the Apple IIgs had much better ways of handling color. Maybe we'll talk about that in the future, but for now, this is just sort of an introduction as to how you can kind of demonstrate, how you can kind of play with this pixel artifacting problem in BASIC if you want to, using relatively simple AppleSoft BASIC commands. Okay, that's all for now. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'll go ahead and stop here. Hope it was interesting to at least some of you. Yeah, and comments are open if anybody wants to correct something that I've said or add suggestions or elaborations. If anybody wants to extrapolate, if anybody wants to discuss, please feel free. Comments are open. All right, I'll talk to you folks later. Bye-bye for now.